$11.6 billion over the next decade for road and bridge maintenance and improvements. Which you don't want to hear, because likelihood is actually what that's going to be is referring to IBR, and nobody wants that either. And everyone knows that's corrupt, and that's just a rebranded, relabeled, with a new coat of paint and new clothing, CRC, Columbia River Crossing. There's a reason why it's been going on now for 8 years itself, and it's gone fuck all. It's gone absolutely fucking nowhere, because people see the corruption in it. Greg Johnson is a massive conflict of interest to have leading it, because conveniently, as soon as, speaking of the corruption, right? Because this is still government, it's still ODOT and WADOT. He, as soon as he was selected as the head, go figure, immediately, as soon as that happens, they select the firm that he had just fucking been hired from to be the lead for the project. That's a conflict of interest. Amongst many other things, like Bob Ordblad. Is it Ordblad or is it Ortblad? I think it's Ortblad. I'm dyslexic. I can't keep my syllables straight. He's a great person to follow on Twitter. When it comes down to the truth and reality behind all the corruption and all the lies of the IBR, of the Interstate Bridge Replacement Project. Did I ask? That's what I fucking thought. So yes, and yeah, everybody's fucked with that. They're just it's not going anywhere because nobody fucking wants to deal with it. In fact, actually, there is a stupid amount of evidence that does prove that there is such a thing as a light rail mafia in this country that pretty much runs all the major transit agencies in the country. And it's even trying to clearly infiltrate into smaller agencies via the bigger agencies if they border each other, like TriMet into C-TRAN, when nobody up in C-TRAN actually wants it. And then you have the corruption up in C-TRAN in Clark County, Washington, when it comes down to their political retaliation against one of their own fucking board members in C-TRAN and one of their own county councilors who were actually doing the will of the voters and said, our voters absolutely and emphatically say we don't want anything to do with funding or anything to do with even having a max light rail or any kind of light rail extension put into Clark County, into C-TRAN. We don't want that. We're fine with our bus service instead. And that's obviously referring to the IBR, the Interstate Bridge Replacement Project. And lo and behold, go figure, as soon as she stands up against the rest of them and says, yeah, I'm going to stay steadfast in what we voted on and against it before, like we did before. And now that it's up for vote again to try to flip it, because apparently all you guys suddenly decided to make a complete 180, even though the ridership, our ridership, you know, the ones that fund us to exist as a transit agency and pay our bill, you know, pay our bills, so pay our paychecks here to be these board members, and also our county constituents, yeah, they also still want nothing to do with it. So I'm going to stay steadfast and vote against this. And I'm going to call out your corruption, because what the fuck are you doing? Deciding that you're going to pull a 180 and insist that universally and unanimously you approve being wholly involved and actually fully supporting pulling the yellow line max. And then they politically retaliated against her the next day by kicking her off and banning her from the C-TRAN board. And I believe she also suffered political retaliation in the county board of commissioners as well. I can't remember if she actually got removed from that too in retaliation, but there was something big with that, which is mind-blowing, because that again shows you how, even out in the wide open, how incredibly corrupt all of our transit agencies are, even down to the smaller agencies. Now, it's not anywhere near one of the smallest agencies in the country, or even in the state of Washington, it isn't, but it is, in the grand scheme across the country, one of the smaller ones. It's in the bottom half in terms of size and funding, for obvious reasons, but still. And that is pernicious, because it literally comes originally from TriMet and all of their connections and all of their backers and their lobbyists. And yeah, like the voters up there, the ridership of C-TRAN, the voters in Clark County and in Vancouver proper and everything, they all still are wholeheartedly, the mass majority, against involving light rail in the IBR. But they're still trying to force it through To the extent that the only reason and only way it's logical and possible that the entire board of commissioners for C-TRAN and most of the county commissioners would suddenly do a 180 and it was sudden, just like a sudden 180 and flip, where they were emphatically themselves against it, to all of a sudden, oh, we really need this, and we really want to fund this, and this is such a great thing, and promoting it and all this other stuff, and being like, we need to approve this unanimously, and if you don't, we're going to retaliate without hesitation, very publicly, because you have to vote in line and in lockstep with this. The only way that's possible is if every fucking one of those fuckers were paid off. They got fucking paid, as in full corruption. They got fucking paid, probably by some lobbies, light rail lobbyists, and thus connected to TriMet, I'm sure. TriMet and even the state of Oregon might have actually funded it too, to try to pay them off and buy their favor, basically, to do that 180. The only possibility is that, literally. And therefore, likelihood is, they tried to get to this woman as well. And then when she refused, and she made it clear that she was not going to back down from this, and her no, especially on behalf of the voters in her jurisdiction, in her district, that likelihood is those lobbyists and the IBR program and everybody else and all associated, entities, even if that was governmental, basically told them, you have to kick her off. You have to retaliate because she refused to accept being paid off and bought to flip. And we can't have that. I guarantee that's what happened. But again, it's just corruption out in the wide open. And again, mind you, they don't have the funding for this shit. Again, this is the whole point of this article and this supposed shitty proposal from Tina Kotek's tampon. To do this funding thing. It's the whole fucking point. Is so that they can supposedly fund transportation and all these other things and the projects that are supposedly necessary and maintenance, blah, blah, blah. And way too big of a portion of this is going to go directly to the IBR. And thus to TriMet, and thus to trying to force that damn max extension across again. You don't even have the money for it. You never will. You know you won't. The political willpower for the voters is against you. The writerships are against you. So no, I'm going to stand my ground and say, no, I'm not going to approve of that. I'm not going to change my mind because I know better and you get retaliated against. Fun. Again, it shows you the economic corruption